So good evening, everybody. Frontlist Media is back again with another interview session of Mr. Berjis Desai, author of the book, The Towers of Silence. And it is a privilege for us to have you, sir. We are looking forward to have a very insightful session with you, a very insightful interview we are sure that the audience is going to get. So please start by introducing yourself. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So I am a lawyer for the last 40 odd years. I was the managing partner of a large national law firm. I retired at 60. And I do what is known as private client practice at the moment. I have also been a working journalist with a vernacular newspaper called the Bombay Samachar, which is Asia's oldest existing newspaper, many years ago. And I have been a columnist in various newspapers and magazines. And about 3 years ago, I published my collection of columns which appeared in a Parsi community news magazine called Parsi, which came under the collection of those Parsis, followed by profiles of 40 very eccentric, memorable Parsis, which was called the Babaji.
Okay.
And both these books were published, and this is my first debut novel, The Stars of Silence.
All right. Okay. Okay, so that was a very quick introduction from your side, and I'm sure the audience might be very, whoever watching this interview will be really knowing that what an insightful person we have with all your experiences. You have written this book. So let's start with the question and answer round. So please tell us, how can you describe Berjis Desai as a person in real life?
So I think in real life, I think I would describe myself more as a writer than rather as a lawyer. And it has always been a dilemma which career to select.
Okay.
And whilst I certainly do not regret being a lawyer, and it has given me a lot in life and in the profession, so it would be ungrateful to say that. But my preference has always been for writing. And increasingly, I am devoting much of my time to my other activities and also substantially in writing.
Okay. So writing is such a prolific profession that one can actually carry it parallel to all the profession he's into. So that turned out for you as for writing your debut novel. Okay. So Towers of Silence is a fictional book that depicts the heritage of the Parsi clan. How did you actually come up with the idea of writing down this book?
So we come from a town called Navsari in Gujarat.
Okay.
Which is the most important center when Parsi refugees first came to India some 1300 years ago. So Navsari is essentially also the spiritual headquarters, the religious headquarters of the Parsis.
Okay.
And I have spent almost all my school summer vacations with my grandmother in Navsari, in the mohallas of Navsari.
Okay.
And heard stories from many of those who were then in their 80s and 90s.
All right.
And essentially, the novel is based on a real life story, which happens in the life of a major Parsi clan in Navsari.
Okay.
And of course, it has been fictionalized in parts, as any novel is.
Mm-hmm.
So that effectively is the backdrop against which this novel was written.
Okay, I'm sure the book might be reflecting about what happens in the Parsi community of India. I'm sure it is reflecting that. So the motto behind writing this book was the same, or you wrote with some other
No,
motto?
no, I don't think it is only if the entire book is about a lot of cross-cultural things,
Okay.
and it just so happens that uh, the characters come from the Parsi community, but
Okay.
then there are also other major characters in the novel who are Sufi saints,
All right.
and many others who are not Parsis. And the interaction, whilst it is around the Parsi towers of silence and a
Mm-hmm.
crusade to save the towers of silence,
Okay.
it is not essentially only about Parsi culture. I would describe it more, if I at all I had to classify it, it's like an occult thriller around the
Okay.
towers of silence.
All right. So the previous book that you have written till now based on Parsi heritage are non-fiction. So this book would be your first attempt to write a fiction novel. It was actually. So how did you put together the real life story, with a blend of the fiction into it? Was it so much challenging, or
Yes,
you just handled it well?
no, it wasn't really challenging because I have been writing short stories and other works of fiction, which for a variety of reasons,
Okay.
whilst I was in the legal profession, I didn't want to publish.
Okay.
But as we speak, also there are two novels in progress. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not that the first time I was writing fiction, but
Mm-hmm.
of course, structuring a novel, editing a novel, connecting it, coordinating it is definitely requires more of a organized effort than writing non-fiction, which comes rather easily to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So writing has some other steps to follow as well after that, organizing it and then getting it published. All right. So some researchers show that the Parsi population will be dwindling in the upcoming years. What should the Parsi clan do to preserve their culture as you're acknowledged as the authentic chronicler of Parsi culture?
Well, I think we have reached a stage where there are only about 80,000 to 90,000 Parsis in the world. Uh, there are many more Zoroastrians, that is,
Yes.
persons who are not Parsis, racially or ethnically, but who nevertheless follow the Zoroastrian religion. So possibly there is something like 3 million Zoroastrians, but
Yes.
only about 80,000 to 90,000 Parsis left in the world. And the situation of demographic decline is very serious. We are almost staring at extinction. And unless a major miracle happens, there does not appear to be any easy solution. So the government of India and UNESCO have started an effort last 6 or 7 years called Geo-Parsi,
Okay.
under which by means of IVF and various other subsidized initiatives, they have managed to give birth to something like 600 additional Parsi babies over 5.5, 6 years. Now, 600 may seem a small number in the
Yes.
context of India, but it is a huge, huge number in the context of Parsis.
In
So
terms of
there
the
is some
population,
hope
it is.
in that. Whilst I believe that extinction may be deferred and the demographic decline, its acceleration may be halted, but ultimately, over the next 100, 150 years, whether we will survive even in any meaningful way is a question mark.
Yeah. So in terms of the population of the Parsis, the government is initiating something, but then again, it all relies on something like,
Government along with
yes.
NGOs, UNESCO, etc., they are taking this initiative.
Okay.
And this initiative is yielding results, but the damage is so extensive and so far done that, as I said, short of a miracle,
Yeah.
to survive really beyond 100, 150 years in even in a slightly meaningful way looks difficult at the moment.
So is the community totally relying on to the government and the NGO? Do they have their belief onto them, or all of the community is actually waiting for a miracle to happen?
Well, the community is largely indifferent. That is the problem.
Okay.
And because of the very high level of literacy, education, etc., the community is very indifferent to religious matters, which may
Yeah.
sound surprising. So you have a minority of very vocal devoted, religious-minded Parsis. The rest of the community is very indifferent. They don't even regard themselves as a Parsi. And they don't wear their identity very clearly. So as a result of this indifference, which has arisen, is also one of the major reasons why the decline is accelerating. So unless there is a change in the consciousness or an awareness comes that something needs to be done, that if nothing else, Parsis are an anthropological rarity which requires to survive. I would say that in the last maybe a decade or so, there is a slight improvement in this awareness or a rise in this consciousness, but not yet adequate.
So, so do you think that people from the Parsi community are not all, I'll say, but is it true to say that there are few people who are ashamed of showing their actual culture from where they belong to?
I don't think that anybody is really ashamed, but I would say they are indifferent. It is one, of course, being nationalistic, being Indians first, all that comes natural, but not to be aware of your cultural heritage, to be indifferent to it, not to practice any social or cultural participate in those activities or be aware of your such a rich heritage. That is the problem. Though, as I said, efforts are being made at various levels by NGOs to particularly inculcate in the youth. And whilst I would say about 20-25% of the youth is getting more aware, but still it's a far cry.
All right. So in every little thing hopelessly preordained, and do we suffer from the illusion of decision making asked by the anti-hero in the story? So coming back to the book, what would you like to say in this context?
So I do think, as a result of my experience and my learnings, and I do believe in this, that however strange it sounds, we underestimate the extent to which things are preordained, at least the major things in life. And we do suffer from an illusion of decision making in the sense that we believe that I did this and I did that. Actually, we do nothing. We are just instruments, and we are being used as instruments by whatever the cosmic forces are. And we just have to flow along with the process of life. So this doership, this feeling of doership, this feeling of I, ego, I don't think that makes any sense. And the moment you realize that you're only an instrument or a soul which has been given the vehicles of the body and the mind to work out your karmic debt and to learn whatever you have to learn in this incarnation, life will become much easier and tolerable.
All right. So that's pretty insightful to listen something from your ideology, your point of view. So that is fascinating in some sense. So when did you find the Parsi Zoroastrian guards of the holy fire?
It was about 4 years ago. That's a trust essentially to protect heritage, very ancient fire temples, which particularly in the city of Bombay and Thane, which is around nearly 50 temples are there. Some of them as old as 300 years or 330 years. And several are in a state of disrepair. Several don't have funds. Because of the dwindling population, the footfall of the worshippers is hardly there. You have one or two worshippers during the day. Then there is a lack of ordained priests to tend to the fire. The fire requires to be tended 24 hours a day. So there's nobody to tend to the fire. So now the laymen also are acting as officiating priests. So all these issues are there. Properties are being lost because they are not properly taken care of and maintained. So this idea of this trust is to help as much as possible to ensure that these things are protected. So it's just now it's a small beginning, but we are expecting that in the next couple of years this will grow into a substantial movement. So it's more from a viewpoint of preserving heritage fire temples and to protect them from any external or internal forces which will cause their erosion or destruction.
All right. So it is a kind of a public religious trust that is not more heard of. These days there are trusts, there are
It's a
religious.
public religious trust.
Yeah, so it
That's correct.
stands somewhere in between that, and the vision is also quite authentic to save the temples and things. So can we actually believe that the actual vision of the trust is to save the culture that is being lost for the Parsis out there? Because
Yes.
Parsis have been very rich in their culture, and they have had a very high engagement in the development of this country. So seeing such a community actually depleting hurts in some way. So the trust is behind taking all the measures to protect their culture and the Parsi community. Is that right, sir?
That's correct. Indeed correct.
Okay. So it out to be the dream of any author that their readers remember them from their thoughts, and their writing style. So what do you want your readers to remember you as, in your writing context, in your thoughts? Please go ahead for your readers.
I think my objective as a writer is first and foremost to entertain and also to make readers think and become more aware of themselves, because I believe that we often see very little. What we don't see, which is all around us and which is there for us to see, to develop those insights. But the objective is essentially to entertain and to ensure that people become more compassionate, they develop more humility, they see the universality of life. That essentially is the object of these writings.
All right. All right. So you're putting your readers into the form of using their brain, and for a writer, it is up to them that how they want their readers to be, whether they want them to be suspicious, whether they want to be entertaining, whether they want their readers to use their mind. And I think you are taking two, three things at the same time, and I'm sure your book is a great entertainment out there. So will your next book also be based on the Parsi culture, or you might be coming up with some different subjects for readers?
So no, it is not on Parsi culture. It is I am actually working since the last couple of years on a thriller which is around the Mahalakshmi racecourse, and which exposes the ways of working of the thoroughbred horse racing industry in India. And there is a crime thriller which is based around that, but which also talks about all the gambling operations and what goes behind the scenes in the thoroughbred horse racing industry in India. So that's a novel called Dead Heat. Dead Heat is where two horses on the finishing line finish so close together that it is impossible even electronically to separate them. Then both of them are deemed to have won the race, and it is called Dead Heat. So the novel is called Dead Heat, and that is nearly complete. Hopefully within the next 6 months, I should be able to publish it.
Whatever.
And the second novel is novel which I am working on is still in a very early stage, where there is a woman protagonist, and it is essentially about women in love. So it has nothing to do with Parsi culture.
I'm sure whatever words you are saying in this interview is only making your audience very, very curious about the next books. Actually, not one book, but two novels that are actually coming out. I'm sure I'll be there to interview or to moderate your session on that also with Frontlist Media. So with all your experiences, you have had over the years, into your profession, into your journey, please share some insights, some thoughts about the writers of today, some advice, what will you like to see in their writing, some flares, the missing flares or likings.
I think the most important thing is to be very lucid and clear, and structure your sentences in a manner as if you're conversing with the reader. That if you are over a cup of tea, you are having a one-to-one conversation with your reader, the book should read like that. So
All right.
often when you finish a writing, I always read it and reread it in my mind. Whether am I conversing with the reader? Am I already answering questions or preempting questions which are arising in the reader's mind? So that when he finishes it, he has all the answers or most of the answers.
Okay.
And it's sort of lucid, clear, structured, shorter sentences, and essentially letting the flow come.
Okay. I'm sure all the points will be.
Of course, partly it is like some people are prolific. They can write every day in a very disciplined way. And it just words.
I mean, you're just answering the next
people are not
question I
prolific.
had in my mind. You went on to answer the next question I had in the mind. I was actually going to ask that, apart from all your professions, apart from all the work for the community you are doing, is there any writing habit you follow? Is there any discipline behind it for, like, writing daily or something like that?
So it's a yes and no answer. So obviously during the pandemic, it greatly helped me to edit the final portions of the Towers of Silence novel. Okay. And to re-edit it and structure it and put it in shape, etc. But increasingly, I would devote on an average at least a couple of hours to write. And over the weekend, etc., where I have more time or on holidays, then I write, but it's not, there is no hard and fast rule.
Okay.
It all depends. But and I do quite a bit of writing, which is not published essentially for various other things, other activities, etc. So taking into account for fiction writing, I think, I prefer to sort of do it in spurts, like go on a holiday or some kind of a retreat or out of town house and try and write together for 5 or 6 days. Okay. Okay. So I am not one of those who, rightly or wrongly, I don't get writer's blocks. Whenever I write,
that's quite amazing. That's quite amazing.
I've never had so far I've never had a blockage of the flow. So
sir, I hope that you never had one. I hope you never have one, because there are many readers out there who will not like their favorite author, to have some mental block and get delayed into the next book.
You.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me polish that answer you gave. So it's not a yes, no, but it's a big slash in between a yes, no of your answer. That's where your answer stands. All right. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing and for having, Frontlist
My pleasure.
The knowledge you shared with us.
Thank you.
We're actually very, very privileged to have you on screens. I'm sure all the advices, all the suggestions you added on the interview will be noted down by the readers listening to it. And you personally, I had a lot of insights from your side, seeing a person like you having so much of experience and still investing into the community works. It is quite inspiring and aspiring at the same time. So I like to congratulate on all the achievements you have had so far. And I'll also like to wish you all luck on behalf of Frontlist Media for all the future endeavors. And with that, by saying that, I'll also hope that I'll see you in the next interview round, next author session round, while the 2 books that are still, going to be published by you is going to come up with the Frontlist Media, and we are going to have a very exclusive interview on that. Okay, so thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I do not want to, but I'll have to say a goodbye on this session, on this beautiful session I had. Thank you so much, sir.
Bye-bye.